Hey guys, welcome to another episode of That Creative Life. It's a special one because we have Hank Green. I'm so excited. I'll give a little bio of you. I was Googling you, but you do so many things. So you're so much more than a YouTuber, but a producer of many YouTube channels and shows via your company Complexly. You're a musician, which I totally want to dive into. You're an author, an entrepreneur. You started VidCon, which, I've been multiple times. It's a huge event for YouTube creators and now just online creators in general. It's so fun to see all the TikTokers there and stuff. That made me sound old. The TikTokers. But it started in 2010. And did it start with 1,400 people? That's what Google says.
1,400 people is as far as I know the right number.
Yeah, perfect.
That's what I remember anyway.
Yeah. And then now it's grown to just this massive thing. You sold to Viacom, and the last one in the US had over 75,000 attendees.
Yeah, so that's like day level attendees. The way that you count in conference world is you count like how many people are here day 1, day 2, day 3, and you add all those up. So it's not 75,000 uniques, as we would say in the business.
Gotcha. Amazing.
It's page views.
And so, that's kind of, did I miss anything? I said author, right? Author, musician, many things.
Yeah, that's I can't keep it all straight either, if we're being honest. I regularly go to my own website to see what I'm doing.
Yeah, so I'm excited to dive into all of those. And I think let's start with like business Hank. Because you're a creative, but you've also built a lot of things. And it's so funny. I think maybe we should start with butt is legs.
Oh, okay. That's not really business,
It's not
Hank.
business at all, but it's my second bullet point. So I'm just going to
skip off business and go to butt is legs.
Yeah, we'll hit business right after butt is legs.
Okay. I have a podcast. I have several podcasts, but I have a podcast with the SciShow team called SciShow Tangents. And at the end of an episode of Tangents, we have a segment that's called But One More Thing, and it's a butt fact. We have a different butt fact every episode. I don't even remember what the butt fact was, but after we stopped recording, we all started arguing about whether the butt was part of the legs, and I went upstairs and I started to quiz everyone at my company, and I'm that boss, where I'm like, I walk in, it's like 5:15, everybody wants to go home.
Listen,
and I'm like,
guys,
is butt legs? Is butt legs? Julie, is butt legs? And then there's like somebody's girlfriend's in the room, and I'm like, Sylvia, is butt legs? And somebody's like, I don't even work here. So that's the work environment. And then I started to I think butt is legs. And it's funny because I have one of my friends, do you know Josh Sundquist?
That sounds so familiar.
He's a motivational speaker. He's a YouTuber. He was at, I think, the first VidCon. He's a great, wonderful dude. He has only one leg. He had one of his legs amputated when he was a kid because of bone cancer. And he has a unique perspective on this, which is that he still kind of has a butt, but his leg is gone. So his leg is all the way up to the hip amputation, but he still has at least one gluteal muscle. So he's like, man, if butt is leg, then what's this? What's this? But there is a lot there. What we learn from conversations such as these is the hot dog, a sandwich, a cereal, a soup is butt legs. Is that it's all very complicated and messy, and I like the ways in which the world is complicated. I think that butt is leg because if I stand up and I move my, and I just sort of feel, put my hand on my butt and I move my leg around, it feels like that's part of the whole system. So that's
a good point. And I'm so glad we addressed this right out the gate.
Right.
Yes. I think it's a really important way to start. So thank you for that. But what's so amazing about not just your, Complexly, all the shows underneath it that are super educational, love them. It all started with the Vlogbrothers channel. And I just watched your video on horses and where they came from. And I was like, this is so interesting. Where do these ideas even come from? You've been doing it for how long? When did the Vlogbrothers channel start?
That's the problem. When you started in January 1st, 2007, and you've had to make a video at least once a week that whole time, you see ideas everywhere. You have no choice but to. Horses are a great example of an animal where the butt is definitely part of the leg. Have you ever seen a horse butt? Jesus, those things, they're massive.
Yeah. I'm from Texas, so I've seen plenty of horses. So take me back. Let's bring it back to Vlogbrothers. What were you doing in your life that you were like, hey, this YouTube thing, let's try it out, you and your brother. And for some context, you and your brother are the biggest overachievers ever. For some context of who John Green is, he's written The Fault in Our Stars, one of many of the novels he's written. And so where were you guys in your life to start that YouTube channel?
Well, I was a blogger at that point professionally. I also was doing like freelance web development and design as nerds did in the mid 2000s. But my primary gig was I was running my own website. That was a environmental technology blog. So all of our money came from getting on Dig and Reddit. Like that was the biz back then. And so I wrote like sort of clickbaity posts about electric cars and solar panels and stuff. And that was great. I liked it a lot. But it was very flexible. And also I kind of recognized that the market was getting weird. That like ads were different, that a lot of things were consolidating. I was spending more time writing for Yahoo News and Treehugger than I was for my own site. And also I was just sort of getting tired of clickbait. So like I could have kept doing it. I probably would have kept doing it for a long time, or I would have gotten a job at some other publication writing. And my brother at that point was a professional author. Like that's what he did full time. And he was really obsessed with Lonely Girl, which was this very early vlog that turned out to be, it was a huge conspiracy that was like, is this real? If it's fake, then that's okay. But if it's real, then this girl might actually be in trouble. Yeah. And Zay Frank, of course, was a huge inspiration and was operating all throughout 2006. And John was super into that stuff. And he was like, hey, I think we should make a video blog together. We should do it for a year. We should make a video every day. We'll trade back days. We don't really like hang out very much. We don't really talk very much. So like we could be brothers again. And also like, I think he had some thought that he sort of already had an audience because of his books, Small. This was way before The Fault in Our Stars. So there was sort of an audience there, sort of maybe a marketing opportunity there for his work, but more like this is really weird and cool. And because, so this has always been the case in our brotherhood. Like if John thinks something is good, then I think it is great. And that's like sort of a younger brother thing, I think, where like anytime John was like, you should listen to this song, I'd be like, I listened to it 10,000 times.
I'm obsessed.
I can play it on the guitar. I can play it on drums. I can sing every note. So that, and because of that, I think that I was the more obsessed one, even though he was the door into it. And I just became super, super interested, and I felt like immediately in 2007 and 2008 that this was going to be like culture changing stuff, and I didn't really understand how. Like I would never have predicted what happened, but I definitely knew that it was going to be as big of a deal as TV, and that being in on the ground floor of that, being part of the shaping of the culture of that, would be, a once in a lifetime opportunity, and also like something that I would always get to feel good about forever. And even if I never did anything again, it would be like, I did that. Yeah. Now I can go to my normal job at the grocery store. Yeah.
Yeah. Things escalated pretty quickly on YouTube, right?
Yeah.
But I was maybe a part of like the third wave. There's been so many waves, but I kind of grew up watching you guys. One of my my biggest inspiration was actually Grace Helbig. She was the first one who I watched consistently, because YouTube was always something I looked up for tutorials and stuff. I never saw it as entertainment until Grace Helbig. And so can you talk to kind of that initial community and what it was like, what it felt like? I mean, because it has changed a lot.
Yeah, well, I mean, the big change is that it's just so big, and so like, and part of that bigness is just its bigness, but part of it is that it's just more types of people. And you see this in YouTube Rewind, where like YouTube Rewind is celebrating all these people you've never heard of. And that it's partially because they don't speak your language. It's partially because, there have always been very broad varieties of humans. And to some extent, one of the things that was very obvious from the beginning of YouTube is like, we're going to be making content for people who don't usually have content made for them. Like LGBT content was huge in the beginning of YouTube, William Sled, and What the Buck. And you also had lots of Asian, like, what I don't know if this is the right thing to say, but I at the time called the hot Asians, where on TV Asians were like they were solving math problems, they were doctors,
and that was it.
Yeah, and then it was like, but Ryan Higa is like he's not about like doing good in school, he's about like being cool. And so like, Asian Americans were happy to have themselves be represented in positive ways, but there's more than one positive way to be represented. It doesn't have to be like, you're always the computer scientist smart person. It can also be like, you're Ryan Higa, you're hilarious, you're savvy, you're hot, you're a good dancer, you're everything, you're the whole package. And so like that was, there were all of these markets that were not having content made for them, and that has continued to the point where it's like, I have nothing to do with this market. Like this is for, I'm almost 40 years old now. So this is for like, 11-year-old girls. Like I am not going to feel like this is part of my community. But back in those early days, because it wasn't as many people, and also because it was sort of more homogenous, where like the people who had access to high-speed internet were going to be demographically similar. The people who were nerdy enough to be on YouTube were going to be demographically similar. The people who were, old enough to have let their parents, didn't have to have their parents be like, I don't understand what this is and I'm not going to let you use it. And that felt, and I think because it felt really special, and I try to like keep my eye on the fact that it felt special because it was homogenous. And so like this, like my nostalgia brain wants to be like, I wish it was the old way, but actually that's just me saying like, I wish it was only for me. I wish that no one else had access to this amazing tool. I want to control it and have it be all about like only stuff that I care about. And when we started VidCon, it really was like, I just invited the people I liked. I was like, here are the people who, and that was almost like, that was pretty much everybody.
Yeah. And so who were some of the names that were at that first VidCon?
Rhett and Link were there. So it's like, it's different. It's people who are still big and people who like have gone on to do other things. So Tay Zonday, I think, was there. Rhett and Link were there. Shay Carl was there. I have the little pamphlet somewhere around here. I have my VidCon year one. Yep,
Gosh,
here
I
it
love
is.
that.
Are you ready to see how big it is?
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah. Charlie McDonald was there.
Yeah.
Jim Louderback, who's now the like GM of the conference, was there. So he was running Revision 3 then. Ian and Anthony from Smosh were there. Daystorm was there. Oh gosh, Ryan Higa was there. Shane, Timothy De La Ghetto, who's still crushing it. Dave Days, Michael Buckley, Phil DeFranco was there.
Yeah, I mean, all these people are still crushing it on all levels.
Yeah, Justine was there.
Yeah.
I'm skipping over a lot of names. John Green, Julia Nunes, who's still making amazing music. Brittany Louise Taylor, Mimi Molly. Molly. She's gone on to do other things. Tessa, who is now huge.
My gosh. It's so funny. She was the first person who I actually reached out to because I was living in Nashville. So when I had the bump of 4,000 subscribers to 100K, the only YouTuber who was living where I was living was Tessa. And I was such a big fan of her and the music videos she would make. And she's one of the first people I reached out to, and I freaking love Tessa. So with this small community turning into, oh snap, this is a business, right? Like, okay, this is something more than just like hanging out with friends, creating things. What was besides making VidCon an actual thing and making it profitable? I mean, I'm sure that could be a whole 2-hour conversation. What was your first reaction to like what you need to monetize? Is it like video sponsorships? Was VidCon your first path to like profitability? What was that first thing that you paid attention to?
Well, it wasn't VidCon. The first year of VidCon, I think that all of us combined took home $10,000. So that was split between like 5 people, which is a great payday. To
but
to
in
an
perspective
extent.
of
But like it's not gonna like cover the year's expenses. But we were making money before then, and I remember getting the email from YouTube saying like you're in the partner program. Like we were in the second round of people invited into the partner program, and there was all this like you had to get on the phone and have these conversations and agree to all these copyright things, and like it was a whole thing. It signed contracts, and now they're just like, here's your money.
Exactly.
You did it. You got the right numbers. don't screw up.
Check. Exactly.
So that when I go back and I look at like, cause your tax return tells you like your last 10 years of income on it. And I did that in 2017 or 2016 when I could still see my 2017 my 2007 income. And I was shocked because I never felt, and part of this is because like I am lucky and my grandfather was a businessman. And so I had like a cushion, a just in case cushion that was enough that I could screw around and try stuff. And I never dipped into it, but I knew it was there. But that year I made like 16 grand. So it was, but it never felt tight. You know, my rent was $500 a month. I ate macaroni and cheese and like the old cakes, you know, at grocery store old cakes where they're like, we need to get rid of this cake.
Oh,
and
literally
you're like,
old cakes.
Yeah.
I was like, what brand is that? Is that like zebra cakes?
Yeah.
That is
so, like
so
we made
funny.
this cake and it's it's on the edge. so it's $3 and it's a whole cake.
Wow.
So and like that felt like luxury to me, where I was like, I was out, I was living on my own, and I could eat a cake whenever I want. I mean, I was 27 years old. I shouldn't have been eating old cakes, but I wasn't making great money, and it's possible that I also didn't report some income. Like I had some money from my freelance stuffs, and just
the life of a
law.
Freelancer.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I have to pay quarterly. Okay.
Oh God, quarterly. And it's like, I've had some big years and some smaller years and it's like, pay your quarterly taxes based on last year's income. And I'm like, I'm not making that kind of money anymore. My life is different now.
That's the exact conversation I just had with my accountant. I'm like, listen, I did really well last year, so I can kind of chill and focus on other things this year. So I am not paying those estimated quarterlies.
Yeah. So God, that life, that creative life.
Yes. Boom.
So to us, like the first time money came into YouTube, and this was before pre-rolls. So this was when you were just getting like those little pop-ups on the screen. And then they'd share the ads that were like in the sidebar next to you. You know, the CPMs were dirt, but like we were like, we're making money off YouTube. So that was at the time that felt like a bonus. Like this YouTube thing wasn't full time.
Were you still keeping up your blog?
Yeah, I was still making most of my money from the blog. I was making money from doing web development, and like I was just like piecing it together. And it was kind of like it was just like I was just out of grad school, and I was still living my grad school life. In grad school, I wasn't getting paid at all. So that like this was just like, you know, it's like infinitely more money than I had then.
Yeah. That's
so then like as the partner revenue continued to climb, and as like the Vlogbrothers channel got bigger, like eventually I think maybe in 2009 stopped doing the blog full time and transferred into being a YouTuber. And it wasn't until, and I had also started dftba.com by then, which is the sort of the other company I am CEO of, which is a merch company that works with creators. And that business model has changed dramatically over the years. Like we were literally a record label at first, and like the majority of what we sold was CDs and like iTunes stuff. So like that was where most of our money came from, which is not the same. We still have some CDs in the warehouse. There is a shelf. and
One singular shelf.
In a 8,000 square foot warehouse, there's a shelf of CDs. And they still occasionally one will go out the door. We sell more vinyl than CDs now, which is
it's coming back.
Wild. So I started that by then, and that was making some money, and through merchandise, we were making some money through selling CDs. And John has always been more worried about money than me, despite the fact that he's always had the stable income. And that, changed a lot in 2014 when The Fault in Our Stars came out, and John was sort of quietly aware, and I was kind of oblivious to this, that he needed money never again, and I still kind of did. And so there was never a tension about that, but I think in part because John was very aware of it and did his best to make sure that wasn't a thing in our brotherhood, because that can be a thing,
Yeah, it's crazy running a channel, running something that is tied to your livelihood with another person is a unique experience, and I'm sure you've encountered some hurdles with that.
Yeah. And it's not unusual. Rhett and Link, Smosh, the Gregory brothers, the Fine brothers, there's lots of people who sort of were able to do it because there were two of them or more. And I think that actually really helps, because it means that if you can trust that other person as if they are you, and you understand their abilities the way you understand your own abilities, and you know that they're not going to ever screw you over because your family is more important than your TV show, then you basically have twice as many hours a week to make stuff. That's a huge...
what I wish I could do. Just replicate myself.
Exactly. It's a competitive advantage over all these schmucks with only one of themselves.
I know. I definitely want to talk about hiring, because that's delegation is probably the hardest thing that I've had to do. And so with that, so there's Vlogbrothers, there's VidCon, there's the merch company. What was the first show that you developed outside of you and the Vlogbrothers?
I don't know. My instinct is to say it was the Lizzie Bennett Diaries, but I'm not sure if that's correct. I think it is. It's
crazy how many there are, Hank.
Yeah. When that came out, 2012, it kind of all happened at the same time. I don't know. When did SciShow start? Well, the first one, I know what the first one was. It was Truth or Fail, which did not succeed. It was a trivia show, which I love and have tried to resurrect.
That's a good show name, Truth or Fail, yeah.
Yeah, so Truth or Fail was an annotations-based trivia game where I would be like, here's the question, and it's a true false or it's two facts and one of them is true and one of them is false, and you have to click on the true fact, and then it takes you to the next video, and either I'm like, you got it right, or I you got it, and it's just
seems like a lot of work, so maybe
it was
it's okay.
A huge amount of work.
Maybe it's okay that it didn't succeed.
And it happened, so the part of why I liked it is for one view, you got all these impressions. So you'd get 10 impressions per playthrough, but it happened at the exact moment that YouTube was like, we don't care about impressions anymore, we care about watch time. And each video was 45 seconds long. So YouTube would never surface them. And so it was just contrary to the algorithm. I think if I brought it back now, and this is I've said this every 6 months for the last 8 years. I think if I brought it back now, it would succeed. But I have not.
I mean, it sounds intriguing, and all the YouTube, not YouTube Red shows. What's it called? Premium. There's a lot of interactive stuff now with. I'm blanking on his name. The gamer guy
did one.
Yeah, I mean that's really cool. I watched a few of those.
Yeah, so I think I absolutely and then he shared his stats from that day, right? And it's just because there's you get multiple impressions for every view through. I'm trying to find how old SciShow is, because I think it's probably the ones that are still around today. I think SciShow and Crash Course basically started at the same time, and they and I think that SciShow started slightly beforehand. So this episode was December 2nd, 2011. That was a little bit before Lizzie Bennett Diaries. It all sort of happened at the same time.
Yeah,
and SciShow and Crash Course were funded by Google as part of their YouTube original programming grants.
Okay. Awesome. And what was the reason that you felt so passionate about? I mean, this is online education. You learned something, right? I mean, was there something in your past that, like for me personally, sharing the creative process came from, oh my gosh, I haven't learned anything beneficial to what I want to do in school. If I can like siphon off all this information from other people and share it with the world, then like, hey, that's exciting. What was your kind of reason to go the more helpful route with your content?
I mean, you don't mean as opposed to yours, right? Because your content is extremely helpful.
No. Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. But just compared to most content on YouTube.
Yeah, okay. I was trying to be delicate with it.
Yeah. Well, I think so there was a few things that went into that. One, like when, so I think the statute of limitations is up on this, and I can go ahead and say it. When YouTube's original programming grant, they had this $100 million that they were like, we're going to make high quality content on YouTube. We have a problem, like they saw this as like as an issue with the platform. We don't have enough stuff that looks polished and fancy. Unilever and Johnson & Johnson are looking at this and they're saying, this doesn't look like something we'd like our ads next to. So we need to make YouTube look shinier. And so they were going to put $100 million into this. And we got an email, and it was like, okay, so here's the situation. And they didn't say this, but this was clearly the gist of it. We put together this $100 million, and we decided to give all of that money away, and we didn't ask any YouTubers. We only asked Hollywood production companies, and we have gotten feedback that is going to be seen as very negative in the community. And I'm like, yeah, you think? Yeah. Oh, I'm shocked to hear that people might find that as.
But honestly, that sounds like some good self-awareness from the get-go. Sometimes they struggle with that even today.
Yeah. So they were like, you have a week, put together a deck.
Wow.
And so like we got that email, and I think Rhett and Link and the Fine brothers and Philip DeFranco got that email, and a few other people got that email. And we put together a deck in a week, and I had a list of like 30 shows. And they were everything from model trains to Pilates. Like I was going just spray and pray, like anything. Yeah. And John was like, okay, what are we good at? And at that point, we'd done some educational stuff on the Vlogbrothers channel because, as I said, I think earlier in the podcast, like when you've been doing, like when you have to do it every week, you just do whatever. And so I did a video on the circulatory system once because I didn't have another idea that week. And like my undergrad is in biochemistry. I have a MS in environmental studies. I'm overeducated. Also, I knew that we were going to keep getting older and that we would be less cool as time went on. And so like one thing you can be less cool at and still succeed at is educational stuff.
Very thoughtful of you to think of that when, you're in your 20s.
Yeah, I was very aware.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, first year on YouTube, I was 27. So I was married. I had a job. I had other jobs. Like I'd had almost a whole career already, in that millennial way where it's like, you're 27, you've gone through your first career already. So I'm barely not a millennial. I think it depends on how you count.
I'm like on the other side of the spectrum with 94. Yeah. Cause I was 94 and I think it starts at 95.
Yeah. And then I think that like there's also the social good component where it's like, if we're going to get $1 million from YouTube, like what's the right thing to do with it? And we didn't get $1 million for one show. And we pitched two. We said, we'd like here's SciShow. It's like science news. It's like looking back. It's like profiling science, like historic scientists and like, just like interesting science stuff. And here's Crash Course. And it's like pretty, like it's very clearly attempting to help teachers and students with current curricula in the US. So one is sort of more like pop and, like clickbait. Crash Course is unlike every YouTube channel I've ever made in that most of the views come in the like years after it gets uploaded. Like Crash Course Engineering was getting 20,000 views a video when it was uploaded. And now all of those videos have more than 1 million views. It's just search. People are like, I am taking this class now. No one wants to watch a video about physics for like on Tuesday. They want to watch a video about physics the day before the test. And we can see in our graph, on our viewership graph,
like midterms
when
and stuff.
AP tests are. Yeah. It's just like, whoop, I guess it's AP week. And then for years of running Crash Course, I'd always get really worried. I'd see like our viewership was crashing, and I'm like, what's happening? It's summer. The kids aren't in school. This channel is different. So we pitched both of those ideas, and YouTube said yes to both. And that was, and we almost didn't say yes to that because we didn't have any infrastructure. John and I think at that point had both hired an assistant, and that was it. Like, we had a person who was like helping us with email, and we hired extremely overqualified people to help us with email, though. So it turned out that both of those guys, had hired and fired. They had done production. Like, Stan had done production before. Michael Gardner had run businesses. He was the executive director of a nonprofit before I hired him as my assistant. So did they just
want to be close to the action, this new YouTube thing?
I think that's part of it. That was part of it. I think part of it was like, for Michael, that nonprofit that he was executive directing, couldn't afford him, basically. And he recognized that, and he was like, I want to be on your board. I don't think I should be your ED. And so he took this opportunity, and I interviewed 2 people for that position, and I had 3 people in the final applicant pool, and one of them was Emily Grassley, who went on to host the Brain Scoop and now works at the Chicago Field Museum, and is a big YouTuber. So like at that point, she was just a grad student, or maybe even just undergrad. So she would have killed it if I had hired her. And the other guy I hired, I got him into my house because I did the interviews in my living room, and I was like, this guy, I'm scared to have him in my home. So I got very lucky.
Things to think about. Yeah. When running a business out of your home. Because I mean, YouTube was that in the beginning. There wasn't this pressure, but all of a sudden, I guess when you get funding from YouTube, that changes things.
So we went from basically 0 employees to our first 2 hires, and then those 2 hires helped us hire the next 6 to 8 people, and that is the team that we did Crash Course and SciShow with that first year.
Amazing. Okay, let's talk about hiring. Mm-hmm. Because Hank, I personally need advice. I think for a while now, the past maybe half a year, I've been kind of just low key, like, help, hiring is hard. But I finally added some process around it, and that's what I think lacks a lot with creatives. So first of all, would you consider yourself like a creator first or an operator first?
I'm definitely not an operator. I think that I am, of those 2 options, I am a creator first. But I think that part of my creative life is my executive roles and my strategic roles. So that is much more I need operations help. All of my companies have COOs that are much more involved in the day-to-day business than I am, but I don't see any of those people as CEOs. And I hopefully I am right in that I feel like I'm necessary in the CEO role because of vision and strategy stuff. But that's also like figuring out who to hire. It's also like fixing HR problems, like all that stuff is part of my role and part of what I do. And I find that stressful, but I also find it creative. They're big problems to solve, and you have to figure out how to solve them. So I kind of see like a blend there, but I am not an operations person. And maybe I could be if I had less stuff to do, but it has to be granular, and you have to be paying a lot of attention to the numbers. And I can use a spreadsheet, but I'm not anywhere close to the level of proficiency in Excel as all of the people who I employ to do that.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Since you started as a writer, web developer, and now you're making videos, and all of a sudden you have to hire essentially a production team, right? And so do you think it was, because video is hard, right? There's a lot of things that are involved with it. So
yeah, especially like, you know, you're gonna, even if you have like video people to hire, you're gonna be like, okay, forget everything you've learned with YouTube now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And what's been so unique in my journey with hiring is they could be amazing editors, but they don't know how to like jump cut properly. Like, that has been the biggest challenge for me.
No, I like when I started my company, I made a tutorial video on how to edit a vlog. I was like, I know this sounds basic, but you're gonna have to watch this video about how to do a J cut in a vlog. I'm sorry, like you can't leave that dead space between the jump cuts. You just can't. The next word has to start before the cut ends. Like,
I'm glad it's not just me. I feel like I'm shouting into this void of like, you don't understand. YouTube editing is different.
Yeah, no, I did. I 100% did that. I like went through and I edited I edited a SciShow video. And for years we sent that video to every new person at the company. And it was just like, watch the CEO edit a video for 30 minutes. And like,
I think that's what's lacking for me.
Push against like your training,
right?
You know,
right? Yeah, I think I'm taking shortcuts, and that I have over like 400 videos. Just like go watch my videos.
Yeah,
you know.
But like the thing is, like no one who like watches a video knows that like you're doing like overlaps.
Right,
and knows how tight a jump cut is.
Right.
You know, knows like the difference between like 2 frames this way, 2 frames that way. It doesn't sound right, and like.
And audio popping.
The whole point, and the whole point of that is that it's not noticeable. Like it's you're trying to create content that has no space for somebody to remember that they have an email they need to write, or that Reddit is there waiting for them with cats. And,
exactly.
And so like the process is different, and like it's created to have completely uninterrupted, like, you know, visual and auditory and information flow.
Right.
And that, you know, it's hard to see. Even if for a professional editor, it's hard to see. And so you have to teach it.
Yeah.
And we teach it.
So do you think that was the biggest thing with hiring in the beginning, is literally breaking down every single little thing, having one video, one Google Doc, whatever it is, to send out to every single hire, so you don't have to repeatedly build into different people?
Yes, I think that is really valuable. And we, you know, we're a video production companies. So like we know how to make videos, right? You know how to make a video. And I think it's like, that's leaning into the like what you're good at, you know? It's saying like this, I know how to communicate this way. And so I'm going to use that for my team. And so, you know, we don't do it that way anymore, in part because like SciShow and Crash Course have really like clear feels. And when people come in and they're doing it wrong, we can just like point to the episode and be like, see, this is the thing you didn't do right. But like we do still have videos that people watch when they come into the company. Like we have a security video that people watch, and it's like, here's how we do passwords. We never email a password ever. We, you know, like we basically like go through the protocols for how to not get hacked. And you know, we never put a password into like in our, you know, at this point in our team, like we have password managers, so people don't even know the passwords like they used to. But we have that video that everybody watches to make sure that they don't screw up our security protocols, because we did get hacked once. And we got invoice scammed at VidCon once, where they like people will send really realistic looking invoices. Google did this where they paid like $10 million to an invoice scammer. And it's just like, it looks like one of your vendors, and you're like, the vendor had sent in a thing, and like it's, you know, it's $2,000, so it's not a big deal. And then you just send it, and then you get another one for like $800, and you send it, and you get another one for, you get used to them, and you send one out for $2,500 and $5,000. Then it's just like,
wow. So maybe that's why those vendor processes with big companies are such a pain in the ass.
It is. Everything, whenever something is a pain in the ass, you know, it's because some dick somewhere made it suck for everyone.
So true. So true. So Getting in the nitty gritty, what do you guys use for like approval processes? Are you all in like the Adobe Creative Suite and you sync everything? Do you use Frame.io for approvals? Like, what is the video production workflow? Is it all, tiny teams for, teams of 3 for each show, and everyone meet? Like, what's the flow?
So the flow is, at SciShow, as much as we can, we try to have one person own an episode. So we don't usually have them in there to shoot it. Sometimes they will be in there to shoot it, but like to begin the flow, scripting and editorial is a separate department. They are in charge of like making sure the script is good. Once the script happens and it is performed onto a camera, then the person owns it from receipt of the footage to upload. And so we don't have a separate upload team. We don't have a separate edit team. We have played with the idea of having like a sort of a ingest editor who's like handling that, because it's fairly low skill work compared with animation, and it's like using animators' time to edit videos isn't as efficient as it could be. But I like the idea of having people own the thing and do the description and do the tags and understand the whole thing from the beginning to end. And also, like, it doesn't really make sense to have an animator spending time uploading a video, because like that doesn't take no time. I'm always shocked to be like, I'm done with my video, and then I'm like, why am I still here? I've been done for an hour. And it's like, I was making the thumbnail and I was trying to figure out a good title, and I was using YouTube's gigantic clunky upload system. But we have that in place kind of so that for quality control reasons at SciShow. And then basically we try to empower every person, and then we do have, like, we send out an episode and then we have somebody review it, and it's basically whoever has time to review it watches it, checks for typos, checks for things that are just like occasionally you start at a line and then you restart the line, and then like that first false start gets kept in the edit for some reason, and so like you're looking out for that stuff. And you just don't notice because you've been staring at it for 4 hours. And then so we have that review, and that review is just a Slack message. It's like, can somebody review this? Whoever has time to review it, reviews it, sends the feedback on it, and then it gets uploaded. So a Crash Course is much more involved, and we use Frame.io, and and I am not as familiar with it because I'm not a producer on that channel. And so that process, like, Crash Course goes through so many approvals. Because like if we get a SciShow wrong, we can take it down and it's not a big deal. If we get a Crash Course wrong and we find out about it like 3 weeks later, it's a nightmare. And you're just like, you're in the YouTube editor, because YouTube has its like internal editor. You can only remove things.
Oh my
you can't
gosh.
add things.
It's
and you're
the
in
worst.
there like trying to cut so that the jump cut doesn't look too bad.
I tried to blur my address before in that, and I ended up just blurring the entire 5 seconds. I was like, screw this.
So, I mean, it's good to have that tool there, because what would we do otherwise? Except let me upload an alternate version of the video, please. Nope. So that's the Crash Course is and it has like the edit, and then the edit goes off to the animation team, and the animation team sends us their animations, which we put on top of the edit, and then that goes off to our consultant, who's has a doctorate in the topic we're talking about, and they watch the whole thing and they're like, that carbon atom is in the wrong place, and then it has to go all the way back to the beginning. So Crash Course is hard and very expensive.
I mean, just listening to it, I'm like, that sounds exhausting. Quality content. Everyone go watch. That is crazy. And is everyone local to Montana?
No. So we have some freelancers who are not in Montana. Almost never are our experts in Montana. Often our hosts come into the studio in Missoula or Indianapolis. We have a second studio in Indianapolis. And so like that depends on various things, like the topic they're covering, but also where they are geographically. So we've flown hosts from the UK to do crash courses. We've also filmed in LA. We filmed Crash Course Entrepreneurship in LA at the YouTube Space. We filmed some shows at the YouTube Space. We filmed some shows. I don't actually know where we ended up filming Entrepreneurship. I don't think it was at the YouTube Space. I think we just leased a studio. So yeah, we do it all over, and our animation team is in Toronto, and that's not even our company. That's a separate company called Thought Cafe. And yeah, so our team, our like managing the footage teams are all in the same place because shipping footage around takes forever. And we have to do it for our animation, but that's the only time when we actually like move footage from place to place. And but our editorial team has some remote workers. Our sales team, which is one person, you can't have a salesperson in Missoula, Montana, or Indianapolis. It's not going to work. So they're in DC, and so they can go to New York and LA really fast. Yeah.
Yeah, that's something I wanted to ask you. Did you always know Montana? Like, first of all, why Montana? Is it your family?
No. No, I lived here at the time. It was not a strategic choice, Sarah.
Because I feel like, you're living your life. It'd be very tempting to pack up and be based in LA, right?
It would be easier. I think some things would be easier. One of the great thing about living in Montana is that when somebody invites me to something I don't want to go to, I'm just like, I'm sorry, I can't go.
I'm in Montana.
It's like really hard to get to LA. It's like I don't even have a direct flight. I'm sorry, I can't go. But there are other advantages. The airport, honestly, it might be the biggest disadvantage to operating a business in a small town is not having nonstops. So if I could get to an airport within an hour that had a nonstop to LA, it would change things. And we do have some this is hilarious. We have some nonstops to LA, but only sometimes of the year and only on Tuesdays and Fridays.
Oh my God. I mean, I can't imagine that. Being in New York and having my choice of three that are directly around me, And it's like all nonstops. Tickets to LA are super cheap.
Yeah. So that is not great. Though I also don't love flying anyway. And I'm not going to get coronavirus this way. I just stay in my house.
There you go.
So other disadvantages, like the talent pool is of course smaller, but at the same time, we're not trying to hire 20 people a year. We're not that kind of company, and I don't have any interest in running one of these 10x startups that grows 10x a year forever and takes venture capital money and just grinds themselves into the ground for something that might not happen.
Exactly. Well, I wanted to ask you about that. Where does that go back to? The way you were raised? Because you said your dad's a businessman too, right? So your dad and your grandpa. So why do you not have that desire? Because it would almost seem natural for you to, you have this influence, you're building these companies. How do we make this the biggest thing ever?
Yeah, there's a couple of things. One is my dad is really into that, into this way of running businesses. My dad, so my mom's grandfather, my mom's dad is the one who is a business person and was a CEO of an oil company for a little while, but mostly was in the paper industry. He was an engineer, got into the paper industry, worked his way up to be a CEO in making paper. And then his company got acquired.
What you're saying, he's Michael Scott.
Yeah, well, and then his company got acquired by Time because they were vertically integrating so they could make their newspapers.
Not actual. He
made paper.
Oh,
he made paper out of trees. And then Time acquired that company so that they could print their magazines more cheaply.
Oh, makes sense.
And he was the executive, and he moved up and became an executive at Time. So that's that. And then so he was just a business guy, ran businesses. And the family is huge. So he had 3 kids, and all those 3 kids had lots of kids. And we're all close, and it's a great family. So it was real. I don't when this is such a short podcast for all the ground we're covering, but my dad married into this fairly wealthy family, and he was very working class growing up. And I think that he has a really unique perspective on it from that, with that lens, where he, really wanted to like make good for us, but at the same time like was really like aware of and critical of people who were just wealthy for being wealthy's sake, people who got all this money and all they could do with it was get more money and like never think about what they were doing on the way there. And my mom was the same way. Like she obviously they get along for a reason. And like my mom was always very active and like she was a community organizer while I was growing up and like worked for the city and worked for Disney, like helping them on like sustainability initiatives. And my dad ended up working at the Nature Conservancy for a long time. And then he was in commercial real estate. So he knows all this stuff. My dad has done everything. He was a commercial fisherman. He was a taxi driver. He was a pilot. So it's ridiculous life. And like my dad, like he sends me these books on like, here's how you grow a sustainable business. And I've taken investment in companies and I know that it kind of sucks. Like you can't make your own decisions anymore. It has to be to some extent about, like what your investors want. And that means that like you have this other stakeholder. Like for us, we have basically two stakeholders. We have the people who watch the videos and we have the people who work for the company. And that's very simple. Like we have to take care of both of those people. And then when you have this third thing that's like, these are the people who are telling you that you have to sacrifice for those two groups for our benefit. I understand that that's necessary and that like, that is how the economy works in America. And like, how else are you going to do it, right? Like these are the people with the money, they have the power, you're going to have to like work with them. But if you don't have to, I don't see why you should. So if you can find ways not to do it, then you only have those two stakeholders. And two stakeholders is much easier to balance between than three. In any situation, it's why marriages are usually two people. Like it's very hard. It's much easier to balance between the needs of two people than three. So,
yeah. 100%.
And yeah, so that is, yeah, I think part of it. I also like, I have been really, like part of why I'm interested in business is trying to do it differently. And I think that that's really important. I think it's important for progressive people to realize who might be sort of resistant to business because, of the damage that has been done by lots of, sort of profit first businesses, investor first businesses that they're a huge part of the world economy is like, the entire tech industry is like 7% of the US economy. It doesn't seem possible, right? And like a huge part of the economy is small businesses with 1 to 20 employees. And countries where that is more the case are more equal and they are more stable and they are healthier. Germany is the best example of this, where almost every company in Germany has fewer than 500 employees. And like, and there are, there's Siemens and there's exceptions to that, but there are so many of these like sort of middle-sized companies in Germany where America is just not good at that, because as soon as a company has 50 employees or 100 employees, it gets acquired. And I, like obviously I've also been through that process of like doing an acquisition, and it's it's a little bit wonderful. It's a little bit terrible. And like there's always pieces of you that kind of wishes it didn't happen, but also pieces of you that are so happy that it's like the most ambivalent I've ever felt about anything is selling a company. And also the process itself is very terrible. It's like it takes forever.
Well, especially
and you're
with
trying to run a company and you like also have to do this other thing. Yeah.
Well, and I can imagine that it would be an extreme relief to especially sell an events company.
And that's why it happened. It's just such a stressful business. And like being a public facing CEO of a company where anything can go wrong, and like it was too much stress where like like these 4 or 5 days a year, not just that I was betting like that company on it, but I was kind of betting like my public image on it. And so like that's a kind of a selfish reason, but like, ultimately like I like the level of stress that I was experiencing was a little unsustainable. So I had to and it wasn't good for the company either. And I feel like for a long time I've sort of held VidCon back by not being aware of the state of the internet anymore. Like I'm 39 and like I'm not on TikTok, and so like that
You're not on TikTok. Do you watch it?
I do watch TikTok.
Yeah. We got into a Twitter thing recently. I'm so intrigued by the people who are on it, the future of it. But it's still very, you've seen firsthand, if the platform doesn't have a sense of respect for the creators and they don't at least try to help them in some way in terms of bringing in brands or making money, I think that platform can be in danger.
Yeah. And like what TikTok is betting on right now is that it is so cool that there will always be people underneath who will come into that space. And like, if you say, I'm not happy with TikTok, TikTok will be like, okay, well then we'll start featuring this creator who is over the moon to be getting any kind of attention next in the feed. That won't last forever. And I think that we're like in the beginning of that transition now. And what ends up happening is that like, creators get creators on their side. And so even, when Ethan Klein comes out and says like YouTube is completely screwing us, and like a lot of smaller creators are Ethan Klein fans, then like they come in and they're like, I will not be a party to this. And I think that will eventually happen on TikTok. I think it'll be slower because the audience is younger and they're going to be less receptive to that. They don't want like a complicated idea of what it is. But I also worry about TikTok just because it is so much candy. Like it is really candy.
You just sit there and just, I mean, an hour will pass and I'll be like, wait, what just happened?
No,
and that hasn't happened since Vine. So it's an interesting, there's a little bit of nostalgia from it. But the audience is so much younger. So sometimes I'll be watching stuff and I'm 25. So, I don't know what to say about that, but it's the first time where I've been like, oh, I'm a little out of touch all of a sudden, and it's a strange feeling.
It's also the nature of the platform is so sort of mutational, and like there is always a new thing. And it's like, those TikTok teens are super out of touch with the Twitter memes. Like they don't, we're all out of touch with something.
That's true. Okay, thanks for making me feel better because I am on the Twitter game. Twitter is
ready
my place
at any moment. Yeah.
Oh yes.
Yeah, you're old. Sorry, it happens.
I know. God, title of this: Sara is old. So with all these different things, what are you most excited about right now? I think we talked about, VC and bootstrapping and stuff like that. And you recently announced that you're giving away $50,000 in funding to a small business. So can you tell me a little bit about that? Because that's very exciting.
Yeah. So I've realized at some point that like people would say to me, like, you're so like all of your businesses succeed. And I have like a secret tool that no one else has, which is like 100,000 to 200,000 people who support my work. Like VidCon, we were able to market it to those people and say, here's this thing that we're doing. And, a lot of the people who went to the first VidCon were there to basically say like, I believe in you, Hank. And that's a really powerful tool that like no business has access to. And this is something I say to creators all the time. Like we all spend a lot of time marketing products that aren't ours. And this, you've heard this, like we should spend some time marketing products that are ours. And that doesn't necessarily mean t-shirts. T-shirts is fine. But at DFTBA, we don't think about t-shirts as like the growth industry. One, because like people are like a lot of our audiences are getting older and we don't wear graphic tees as much. But like the real growth is saying to creators, like, what's your product? We want to help you make a thing that you believe in that's different and that's interesting. And that, we've like all of our biggest products are not, shirts. They're subscription, like pin subscriptions or like Kurzgesagt does this amazing yearly calendar. This was all their idea. Like I'm not taking credit for that. That like, is basically a tentpole event for their channel now. So like, what is the thing? And like for us, that was VidCon, and it was Crash Course in SciShow, and it was the Lizzie Bennett Diaries, and it was DFTBA, and like these things are we're supported not just by like our ability to put a little bit of money into it, which was not the secret to the success. It was supported by the community. And so what I want to hear is like somebody with a different perspective than me, different skills than me, what product is out there or what business is out there that like we can lend our support to, whether that's like actually helping it with design services or marketing services, or it's, just saying like we are all now brand ambassadors for this company. And like in exchange for that, like we are the business accelerator. In exchange for that, we want you to give 10% of your profit to charity forever. And
which is a bold statement.
I don't know if this is gonna work. It might be a terrible idea. But I don't think I wouldn't want to put like all of our energy behind something that wasn't doing that. Like DFTBA now gives all of John and I's profit goes to charity now, because like that's what we like, that makes that business much more interesting to me. If like every time we sell a shirt, like money goes to Partners in Health to build the like a hospital for pregnant women in a place where 1 in 17 women will die in childbirth, like that is much more motivating to sell that shirt than like, oh, I'm gonna get an extra $6. Like that's not what I at this point. Part of the advantage of living in Montana is being able to see the difference between one like that, like there's a huge difference between $1 million and $2 million in net worth. Whereas in some places, I think that difference is completely invisible, and that it's just like and there's a huge difference between making $100,000 and $200,000, and a huge difference between if I lived in New York, it would be so easy to have all of the money that I made just evaporate. And places like that are designed to make you feel like you don't have enough and to always have a service for the next level of income. Nowhere in Missoula, Montana, it is anyone assuming that someone makes more than $100,000 a year, because not very many people do. Like it's just not economically efficient to create systems to absorb that much capital.
Well, in New York, in terms of how many people are here in such a small little island, and then it was ranked like the number 4th biggest city for millionaires, just out and about. So it is interesting how that attributes to everything, the way you feel, the way you need to run your business. And I'm sure in Montana, you're not paying up to 50% in taxes.
No, it's lower. Yeah. Yeah. So there's that. And I mean, taxes is part of it, but like, so is cost of living generally, like obviously very different. And like cost of running a business is lower because your employees' cost of living is lower. The cost of renting a building is lower, or buying a building. But like really like a huge advantage is I am ambitious enough on my own. I want enough on my own. I have enough of this drive on my own that I don't need to be in a place where I'm comparing myself constantly to people who are doing just a little bit better than me, or even a lot better than me, and like feeling like I don't have enough, even though I have way more than enough. Yeah. And
it's really good self-awareness.
well, I think that if I hadn't been here when I did it, I wouldn't have it.
Right.
And all my I have friends who are school teachers and farmers, and who will work their asses off and make the normal amount of money a year, and it's to ever feel like I only ever feel like I have too much, and that's the right way to feel.
Because of that, do you ever feel, because I'm the type of person, I don't know what word you would put to it to describe it, but because I've had many years of my life like striving for the dream, right? And that I grew up in a culture of just like say yes to everything. You're going to attract more serendipity, and it's done well for me. But now when I have this platform and I have opportunities coming in that make me money. It's almost like I can't turn it down because what would 18-year-old Sara say? Because she was starving for that.
Yeah.
So it's this insane cycle.
I did a whole
like,
talk on this.
You did? Okay. Well, please tell me your insights.
The talk is, I had titled it "Fuck Your Dreams," and the main takeaway is you have no obligation to your former self. They're dumber than you, and they don't exist.
Wow. Dropping truth. Yeah, because it's like subconsciously I'm like, oh my God, that Sara who is in Nashville and only eating oatmeal and, wanted to drop out of college so bad, she would never say no to this brand deal.
Well, what I would say to you today is not don't. I think that like loyalty to ourselves is important, and I think that like understanding our journey is important. But what I will say to you is like, say yes to things that you are gonna enable you and like enable you to do the things that you want to do, and like absolutely, and drive. Like I think that like, so I can be internally critical of like hustle culture and like, push and push and push, but like we need fuel, and if you don't have fuel, you don't get out of bed. So like everybody has some fuel, and so like find the sources of fuel. And when they are healthy, hold on to them. And when they are unhealthy, recognize it. And I'm not saying that you're never going to burn unhealthy fuel. I do it too. A lot of the times when I have been most productive and done the best work have been when I was feeling inadequate, or like it was revengey because like people I hated were succeeding, and like those things are unhealthy, absolutely. But recognize it when you're doing it, and know that it's not going to sustain you forever. And then like find the healthy fuels too, because there are lots of those, and those can be like being part of a cool, interesting, big story, or helping other people. Like you were talking, like I think that part of the reason you like doing this podcast is because it helps other people succeed in their creative endeavors, and find a way to sustain their creative ambition. And like that is a wonderful feeling, to be able to make stuff that people like. And to some extent, it's also okay to be fueled by, appreciation. And like, that's always going to be a little bit imbalanced with our lack of self-worth. And so like appreciation is feeding into that, and like leaning too much on it can be too much, but there is a healthy balance to it. And I think that also like one reason you probably like doing this podcast is because you get to talk to cool people. And like, that's why I love to be on podcasts, is because I get to talk to cool people.
I'm not going to be in Montana asking you for like a lunch date anytime soon. So it's like, oh my gosh, I get to spend time with legends like Hank Green. Hello. Yeah. And that's one of those things where I have to continually remind myself, because I've been very used to doing the thing where it's like, okay, college was my thing, and then YouTube was a side hustle, and then always pouring in most of my energy to something that wasn't earning me money. But then once those things become your job, it's like, I always need another side project. And so this podcast has now been 70 episodes of me just like, hiring an editor to figure it out. And now 70 episodes in, I'm like, you know what? It would be ideal if I could get back that like $2,000 a month that I'm like spending on just like editing and stuff. So it's selfishly, it's been really fun and really cool to have these conversations. And now I'm like, okay, maybe we can introduce some sponsors.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, so like there is a part of that is personal strategy. It's like, I don't want this to feel like work. And there's part of that's business strategy. Like, we never launch a channel with sponsors. We want to like try it out, see it, like give it every opportunity to succeed and not have any barrier. And we want people to know that we're doing it not just to make money, but because we want this content to exist in the world. And, I think we've just done a whole season of Journey to the Microcosmos without an ad. And we just started talking about our first ad.
Tell me a little bit about that channel. Because how did you get the idea for that? Holy smokes.
I watched a YouTube video. It had like 2 million views, and it was a video of a cell dying in a dramatic fashion. So, oftentimes cells will die and their membranes stay intact and like everything sort of turns to goop inside and then they eventually break apart. But this cell, something happened. I don't know if there was like some foreign agent in the water or something, but its membrane just broke down. And so like a little bit of it started to leak out and then it like reformed itself. And then all of a sudden, just like it's just like a zipper, the cell membrane opened up like a slow motion bubble and all of the inside just sort of flowed out. And it was like, I'm watching this cell die and I'm like feeling emotions. I'm like worried about it. I'm like, this happens literally billions of times every time you brush your teeth, right? And so like there should be no connection to this. And I watched it and I was just like, it has 2 million views. It's beautiful. It made me feel. And I wrote to the guy who uploaded it and I was like, I love this video so much. Do you do anything else? And he pointed me to his Instagram that was like all stuff like this. And then I was like, we should like, and then I went to my Google Docs and I was like, I wrote up a proposal for him and I was like, here's what I want to do. I want to do a show. I'll narrate the show. And like, here's like a test script. And I just pitched the whole thing to him and I was like, here's how much I'll pay you. And here's how much you'll get if this show succeeds. And he was like, I'm in.
It was very nice for you to go to him. I think my first thing would be like, oh, okay, I can write off this and do my own thing. And but that's,
one thing I did look and I was like, how much is a microscope? And then it was like, oh, it's not how much is a microscope. It's like, how do you use a microscope well?
Right.
How do you prepare these? And he's like, he's been doing this forever. So that did occur to me. But like we have done these co-productions before where like people in the world have expertise. They have shining personalities and just go to them and be like, hey, you want to do a YouTube show? And I did that with Chelsea from the Financial Diet,
which is such a good channel, by the way.
Yeah.
Thank you for
and
producing that.
Of course, like that's like all them. I just like I saw her blog and I was like, you should have a YouTube channel. We met in New York and we had dinner, and she was like, I would never do a YouTube channel. I don't want to put my face in front of stuff. And I was like, that's ridiculous.
And she's so good with it too.
Well, and I said to her, okay, and then she wrote me back and she was like, I'm wrong. I want to do it. I was wrong. I lied to you.
Well, and I think it comes in a time where I think people are starving for more transparency when it comes to money.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's so helpful and it's been really cool to see YouTubers on the show and stuff. I think one of the producers reached out to me and I just didn't follow up and now I'm remembering that. I'm sorry, forgot your name. I'll look in my email again. Yeah. But it's such a good show and I'm such a big fan of just the blunt conversations because I think we need more of that.
Yeah, and it's so taboo. Like asking somebody how much money they make a year is just like, nope. But like, you know why it's taboo? Because it's so deeply unfair. It's so deeply unjust and unfair, and like we don't want to talk about it because we don't want to admit it. We don't want to admit, like people who make a lot don't want to admit their wealth, and people who don't make a lot don't want to admit their poverty, and and it just perpetuates the system. If we don't think about it, then all we have is like these examples of conspicuous spending. That's the only way we display our wealth. And conspicuous spending can be a consequence of wealth or a consequence of pretending to wealth and going into debt. And then there's no way to see the difference between those two things. And to me, conspicuous spending is, I try not to judge because there are lots of cultural factors that go into this, but it drives me nuts because it is just creating a void inside of someone else to fill up your own void. Yeah. And that's all it feels like to me. And I'm just like, ah.
Yeah.
But I also am very multi-generational fine. So
Right. Yeah. I mean, and it goes back to that. It's crazy because I have both of my grandparents on both sides, and my grandparents were the ones who went from insanely poor to having all of these different businesses and building up. Now my grandpa has had a construction business, and my mom's side or my dad's side, those grandparents are both doctors, and they were dirt poor, put themselves through medical school. but it's like they had those opportunities in the 1940s, right? And so it really does go back. And it's like, dang, that's what you call lucky. You know, it's like there is hard work. There's a ton of hard work involved with this, but the fact that I was like born in Texas, I had a roof over my head, I didn't have to worry about food, I had like a loving family, like that's what we call being super lucky, right?
Yep, absolutely. And I think that the correct response to that is not guilt, but I think it is gratitude. I think it's understanding that luck. I think it's also doing the right thing with what you have. And like interfacing with it, even if it's not like the best, most comfortable way to feel. So yeah, I do it. I'm trying. I'm trying that.
We're all out here trying, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, so I do want to show you one more thing before we wrap up, but I'm actually going to wrap up the podcast right now, and then I'm going to keep recording. This is something that's not going to go on the podcast, but I just want your opinion on something. And it might show up into future things. Who knows? Who knows? But Hank, thank you so much for being on this podcast. It was a pleasure to have you. This is definitely like a bucket list check for me. It truly is. And what's so funny is so my first guest was Gary Vaynerchuk. And he was a big check mark, but he's almost like on the opposite spectrum in terms of like, not the opposite spectrum. It's just, it's funny to have.
We approach business differently. Me and
exactly.
Gary. Yeah.
Exactly. So it's fun to like have Gary V, Hank Green, Linus Tech Tips, Peter McKinnon, Hannah Witten. There's Shan Booty. I love the variety of guests. So thank you so much for being on. I think you are going to help a lot of people.
Oh, hey, thanks.
Yeah.
You too.
All right. Thank you. Guys, make sure you're subscribed on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen. Every single Monday, there's a new podcast. And until next time, thanks for listening.